As the Mafia boss slipped off the mountain cliff, his fingers scraped against loose rock, grabbing for anything. Nothing held. His body dropped, then stopped. Something had him by the wrist. Caitlin Cisco lay flat on her stomach, one arm stretched over the edge, her fist locked around a stranger's hand like her life depended on it. Maybe it did. "Don't let go," he shouted. His voice cracked, not from fear exactly, maybe from disbelief. A man like him wasn't supposed to end up dangling off Palisade Head with a woman he'd never met holding his whole weight. "I'm not planning to," she said, though her arm already burned. Below them, Lake Superior churned against the rocks, cold and uncaring. Above, the wind kept pushing, like it wanted him gone too. Caitlin dug her boots into a crack in the stone. Her shoulder screamed, but still, she held. "Who are you?" he asked, teeth clenched. Does it matter right now? It probably didn't, but he asked anyway, because talking kept his mind off the fact that his hand was slipping slowly, inch by inch, out of hers. 10 minutes earlier, none of this made sense yet. Yuta Mahito had come to Minnesota to disappear for a weekend, not from danger, or so he thought, just from noise, from men who called him boss too many times a day, from a business that never let him breathe. He hiked alone, which his people hated. His right-hand man, Jinjong, hated it most. "You shouldn't be out here without protection," Jinjong had argued the night before, back at the lodge. "I'm not a child," Yuta answered. "I need one weekend." Jinjong's jaw tightened. He didn't argue further. Maybe he should have. Caitlin Cisco wasn't supposed to be on that trail either. She worked trail maintenance for the state park, which meant most days she was clearing brush or fixing signage, not chasing sunrises. But her cousin Journey Blackwood had dared her to catch the sunrise from the cliff before her shift, and Caitlin never turned down a dare. Stubborn, her mama always said, stubborn like a mule with opinions. So there she was, camera in hand, watching the sky turn orange over the water, when she heard footsteps behind her. A man moving fast. Too fast for a scenic trail. She didn't think much of it, until she heard the snap. A branch, maybe, or a rock giving way. Then a scream that wasn't a scream, more like a man trying not to scream and failing. She turned in time to see him go over. Caitlin didn't think. She just moved, dropped her camera, dove for the ledge, and caught his wrist a half-second before he vanished completely. Back on the cliff, seconds felt like hours. "You're gonna have to help me here," Caitlin grunted. "I can't pull you up alone." "Then don't," Yuta said. Strange thing to say, hanging off a cliff. "Excuse me." "Let go. Save yourself." She almost laughed. If the situation weren't so insane. "That's not happening. Not today." He hesitated. Something about her voice. Steady. Too steady for someone risking her own life for a total stranger. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you do this for someone you don't know?" Caitlin didn't answer right away. Her arm shook. Her fingers were losing feeling. "Because somebody's gotta," she finally said. "Now shut up and help me." Above them, unnoticed, a figure stood at the tree-line, watching, not moving to help, not moving at all. Jinjong. He'd followed Yuta that morning, against orders, worried about exactly this kind of situation. But he didn't call out, didn't rush forward. He just watched, phone in hand, thumb hovering over a name in his contacts. Not 911. Someone else. Maybe he was in shock. Maybe he was deciding something. Whatever it was, he didn't move to save his boss. Not yet. "I need you to swing your other hand up," Caitlin said. "There's a ledge, maybe 8 inches, to your left." "I can't see it." "You don't need to see it. Trust me." Trust. A word Yuta hadn't used freely in years. Not in his line of work. Trust got people killed. But he had no other cards to play, hanging over open air with a woman whose name he didn't even know. "On 3, she said. 1, 2. His hand swung. Missed. Swung again. Caught. His knuckles found rock. Enough to hold, barely. His breathing came out ragged. "There you go," Caitlin said, relief in her voice. But she didn't let go of his wrist. Not yet. Not until she was sure. Minutes passed like that. Two strangers, one holding on, one hanging on, neither willing to give up. Finally, voices. Other hikers. A man named Ezra Whitlow, out walking his dog, spotted them and started shouting for help, dialing for a ranger crew at the same time. "Hold on," Ezra yelled, scrambling closer, but staying back enough not to make it worse. "Help is coming. Just hold on." Caitlin's arms trembled violently now. Every second longer felt impossible, but she thought about letting go, and something in her refused. "Don't you dare give up on me," she said through gritted teeth, more to herself than to him. Yuta looked up at her face. Really looked. Sweat and dirt and pure will. "Why?" he asked again, quieter this time. "Why fight this hard for me?" Caitlin didn't answer. Maybe she didn't have one. Maybe she just knew, somewhere deep down, that some people are worth holding on to, even when you don't know their name yet. The rescue crew arrived 12 minutes later. Ropes, harnesses, a whole operation unfolding fast. They pulled Yuta up first, then helped Caitlin back from the edge, her arms shaking so bad she could barely stand. Yuta sat on the ground, chest heaving, staring at the woman who'd just saved his life. "Caitlin Cisco," she finally said, holding out a hand that still trembled. "In case you were wondering." He took it. "Yuta Mahito." Neither of them let go right away. Somewhere in the trees, Jinjong slipped away unnoticed, his phone already lighting up with a reply from the number he'd texted. A reply that read only, "Good. Now we wait." Whatever that meant. Nobody on that cliff had any idea what was coming next. Hey y'all! If this story's already got you hooked, do me a favor and drop a like before you keep scrolling. Comment where you're watching from. I love seeing that. And if you're new here, hit subscribe because this one's about to get wild. Jinjong's text wasn't random. It was the beginning of something Caitlin Cisco never saw coming. A plan already moving before she'd even learned Yuta Mahito's last name. 3 days after the cliff, Yuta showed up at the small trail office where Caitlin worked, holding 2 coffees and looking like a man who didn't know how to say thank you properly. "You didn't have to come find me," she said, though she didn't sound like she minded. "I did," he said. "You saved my life. That's not a text message kind of debt." She almost smiled. "Almost. You could have just sent flowers." "I'm not really a flowers guy." Caitlin studied him for a second. Something about him didn't sit right. Not in a bad way exactly. More like a puzzle missing pieces. His clothes were too clean for a hiking trip. His watch cost more than her truck. And that man from the Treeline, the one who never came to help, kept crossing her mind. "Who was that guy?" she asked. "The one just standing there while you were about to fall." Yuta's jaw tightened. "Jinjong. He works for me." Funny way of showing loyalty. "He has his reasons," Yuta said. Too quickly. Too practiced. Like a man used to covering for people who didn't deserve covering. "Everybody's got reasons," Caitlin said. "Doesn't mean they're good ones." He didn't argue. Maybe because she was right. Maybe because he didn't have a good enough answer. Not one he could say out loud yet. "Can I ask you something else?" she said. "Depends. Why were you even up there alone? Man dressed like you. Hiking a cliff trail before sunrise, no gear, no partner. Doesn't add up." Yuta looked at her a long moment. Needed to think. "About what?" "Things I can't really talk about." "Convenient." He almost smiled at that. "Almost. You're stubborn." "So I've been told. My mama used to say I'd argue with a stop sign if it looked at me wrong." That got an actual laugh out of him. First one she'd heard. It changed his whole face, softened something that usually stayed locked tight. "There it is," she said. "Didn't think you had one of those in you." "Don't get used to it." Wouldn't dream of it. What Caitlin didn't know, couldn't know yet, was that Yuta Mahito ran one of the most feared organizations in the Midwest. Not the kind of thing that came up over coffee, not the kind of thing you casually mentioned to the woman who pulled you back from death. But secrets like that don't stay buried. Not for long, not in Minnesota, where everybody eventually knows somebody who knows somebody. Back at Yuta's lodge outside Duluth, Jinjong paced the length of the sitting room, phone pressed to his ear. "She's asking questions," he said, voice low. "About me. About that day." On the other end, a woman's voice calm, cold. "Let her ask. Questions don't matter if she never gets close enough to answer them herself. And if she does get close..." A pause, long enough to mean something. "Then we handle it. Quietly." "She's not a threat," Jinjong said. "She's a trail worker. Fixes signs for a living." She held on to him for 6 minutes. Jinjong refused to let go even when help was slow. People like that don't stop pulling once they start. Jinjong didn't answer right away. "Watch her," the voice said. Nothing more. Yet. The line went dead. Jinjong hung up, staring out the window at the lake beyond the trees. Whatever this plan was, it had started long before that cliff. Maybe even before Yuta decided to take that hike alone. He thought about warning his boss. Thought about it hard. But loyalty, real loyalty, wasn't always about telling the truth. Sometimes it meant carrying the weight, so nobody else had to. At least, that's what he kept telling himself. He pulled a folder from a locked drawer, one he hadn't opened in months. Inside, old photographs. A younger Yuta, a younger version of the woman on the phone, and one photo, worn at the edges, of a black man Jinjong didn't recognize, standing beside them both like he belonged there. Jinjong stared at it a long moment before sliding it back into the folder. Whatever this was, it went back further than anyone currently involved probably understood. That night, Jinjong drove into town without telling anyone. He parked outside a small diner, sat in his car for almost 10 minutes, then finally walked in and sat across from a man he hadn't spoken to in years. Ezra Whitlow, the same man who'd found Yuta and Caitlin on the cliff. "Didn't expect to see you again," Ezra said, stirring his coffee slow. "Needed to ask you something." "Go on then." "That morning on the trail, before you found them, did you see anyone else out there? Anyone watching? Maybe from a distance?" Ezra thought about it, brow furrowed. "Actually, yeah. Guy standing up near the treeline. Didn't move the whole time. Figured he was just another hiker, frozen up from shock." Jinjong's stomach tightened. He already knew the answer before he asked the question. He just needed to hear somebody else say it, confirm what he already feared. Somebody had positioned him there that morning on purpose to watch and report back, which meant none of it had been random. Not the hike, not the fall, maybe not even the woman who caught him. "You all right?" Ezra asked, noticing his face. "Fine," Jinjong said, though he clearly wasn't. "Just tired." He left without finishing his coffee, mind racing the whole drive back. If the fall wasn't an accident, then everything that came after, the photo, the note, the threat against Caitlin, all of it connected to something set in motion long before that morning. He thought about Yuta's father, gone now 8 years, and the promises made at his deathbed. Promises Jinjong had kept quiet about for a long time, mostly because keeping quiet felt safer than the alternative. Maybe safety wasn't the point anymore. Caitlin didn't know any of that. All she knew was that the man she saved kept showing up at the trail office, at the diner she liked on Tuesdays, once awkwardly at her cousin Journey's food truck, ordering a burger he clearly didn't know how to eat properly. "You've never had a smash burger," Journey said, arms crossed, judging him hard. "I don't get out much," Yuta admitted. "That's sad, honestly." "Probably. Where you even from? You don't talk like you're from around here." "Here and there," Yuta said. "Moved around a lot growing up." Journey narrowed her eyes. That's not an answer either. Noticed a pattern with him yet? Caitlin muttered, half joking. Journey looked at Caitlin, silently asking 1,000 questions Caitlin didn't have answers to yet. Later, once Yuta left, Journey leaned over the counter. So who is he? For real. Some guy I pulled off a cliff. That's not an answer, cousin. It's the only one I've got right now. Journey studied her for a second. You like him. I barely know him. Didn't answer the question either. Caitlin rolled her eyes, but she didn't argue. Just be careful, Journey said, voice softer now. Something about him feels heavy, like he's carrying something he ain't set down in a long time. Caitlin didn't respond to that, mostly because Journey wasn't wrong. It was on a Thursday, gray skies, threatening rain, that Caitlin finally asked the question she'd been avoiding. What do you actually do, Yuta? For work, I mean. He hesitated, actually hesitated, something she hadn't seen from him before. He always had an answer ready. Not this time. It's complicated, he said. Try me. I run a company, he said. Import and export. Family business. Not a lie exactly, but not close to the truth either. Caitlin felt it, that gap between his words and something underneath them. But she let it go. For now. You always this guarded? She asked. Comes with the job. What job requires that much guarding? He didn't answer. You know, she said, most people, when they nearly die, they get real honest real fast. Life's short, all that. You got more locked doors than before. Maybe I'm still deciding which ones are safe to open. Safe for who? You or me? That question landed harder than either of them expected. Yuta looked away first. Maybe she shouldn't have let it go, but something told her pushing harder wouldn't get her closer to the truth. Not yet. 2 towns over, in a modest house outside 2 harbors, an older woman named Susan Fairweather sat at her kitchen table, staring at a newspaper clipping so old the edges had gone soft. A photo of a young Korean man, maybe 20 years back, standing next to a black man who looked strikingly like Caitlin around the eyes. Susan's hands trembled as she folded the clipping and tucked it into a drawer she hadn't opened in years. It's happening again, she whispered to the empty room. Just like before. Nobody heard her. Not yet. But somebody would need to. Soon. She picked up her phone, scrolled to a number she hadn't dialed in over a decade, and stared at it. Her thumb hovered. Then she set the phone down without calling. Not yet, she said to herself. Not until I'm sure. She walked to the window, looking out at nothing in particular, thoughts pulling her backward through years she thought she'd buried. Whatever was starting up again, she'd hoped it never would. Hope, apparently, wasn't worth much. Susan hadn't always lived alone in that quiet house, outside 2 harbors. Once, she'd had a husband, a good man named Wendell, who worked the docks and never asked questions about the packages that sometimes came through late at night. Questions, back then, could get a person killed. Or worse, disappeared. No trace, no funeral, nothing but silence where a person used to be. The black man in that old photograph, standing beside the young Korean man who'd since grown into someone powerful and feared, had been Wendell's younger brother, Caitlin's grandfather, a man who vanished one winter and never came home, and whose disappearance nobody in the family ever fully explained, not even to themselves. Susan had spent 20 years convincing herself it was over, buried, done. The clipping in her drawer said otherwise. She sat back down at the table, hands folded, staring at nothing. If history really was repeating, then Caitlin didn't just save a stranger on that cliff. She'd walked straight into something that swallowed a man from their own family whole, decades ago, and never gave him back. Back at the trail office, Caitlin got a call she wasn't expecting. Her supervisor, sounding rattled. Somebody broke into the equipment shed last night, he said. Didn't take anything. Just left something on your desk. Caitlin's stomach dropped. What kind of something? An envelope. No name. Just your initials. She drove there faster than she should have, heart pounding the whole way. Inside the envelope was a single photograph. Her and Yuta at the cliff. The exact moment she caught his wrist. A photo nobody should have had. A photo that meant somebody had been watching, closer than she ever realized. On the back, 4 words, written in careful handwriting. She shouldn't have helped. Caitlin's hands shook as she stared at those words, the same hands that had held on so tight 3 days ago, refusing to let a stranger fall. Whoever left this wasn't just watching Yuta. They were watching her too. She called Yuta immediately, voice tight. "We need to talk. Now." He arrived 20 minutes later, and the second he saw her face, he knew something had shifted. "What happened?" he asked. She held up the photo, without a word. His face went pale, actually pale, like all the color drained out at once. "Where did you get this?" he asked, voice low. "Someone left it. In my shed. With a note." He read the note. His jaw tightened, the same way it had on the cliff. "You know who sent this?" Caitlin said. Not a question. "Maybe," he admitted. "Maybe isn't good enough anymore, Yuta. It's complicated. Everything with you is complicated. Try being simple for once. Who is threatening me?" He rubbed his face with both hands, looking suddenly tired in a way she hadn't seen. "Someone who's been part of my family's business longer than I've been alive. Someone who doesn't like loose ends. And I'm a loose end now." "You're a witness," he said quietly, "to something you don't even understand yet." He didn't answer right away, and in that silence, Caitlin understood something she hadn't let herself believe until now. Whatever he was hiding, it was bigger than an import business, bigger than family secrets. And now, somehow, she was tangled up in it too. "I saved your life," she said, voice shaking now. Not from fear exactly, maybe from anger. "And now my life's in danger because of it. I never meant for that to happen." "Doesn't matter what you meant. Matters what's happening." He reached for her hand, then stopped himself, unsure if he even had the right. "Let me protect you, please." "Protect me from what exactly? You still haven't told me what I'm actually dealing with." "My family," he said finally. "It's not just import and export. It's bigger, older, messier than that." "Bigger how?" He looked at her for a long moment, weighing something behind his eyes. "There's things about where I come from that most people never see. Things that stay buried on purpose. My father built something powerful, and powerful things attract people who want to take it, or people who never forgave what it cost them." "Cost who?" "I don't know yet. That's the truth. I don't know everything either." Caitlin crossed her arms, trying to steady her breathing. "So what? I'm just supposed to trust a stranger with secrets he won't even fully share." "You already trusted a stranger once," he said quietly. "On a cliff. With his life. That was different." Was it? She didn't have an answer for that. Not one she wanted to say out loud. "Anyway, I need time," she finally said. "Away from all this. Away from you, maybe, until I figure out what I actually walked into." Something in his face fell, just slightly, though he tried not to show it. "That's fair." "Don't follow me," she added, already turning toward her truck. "I won't," he said, though even as he said it, something in his voice made it sound like a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. She drove off without looking back, hands still trembling on the wheel, that photograph tucked in her glove box, like a warning she couldn't shake. Whatever Yuta Mahito was mixed up in, it had already reached into her life uninvited, and there was no clean way to pull it back out now. Caitlin ended up at Journey's place that night, sitting on the back porch steps, the envelope still burning a hole in her thoughts. "You're quiet," Journey said, handing her a glass of sweet tea. "Never a good sign with you. Somebody left a photo at my job, of me and Yuta, on the cliff." Journey sat down beside her, all the teasing gone from her face now. "What kind of photo?" The kind that means somebody was watching us. Close. And they left a note saying I shouldn't have helped him. That's not just weird, cousin. That's a threat. I know. Did you call the police? And say what? A rich man I saved from falling off a cliff might be in some kind of family trouble. I don't understand. They'd think I was losing it. Journey was quiet for a moment, staring out at the dark yard. You remember Grandma? Susan used to tell us stories about great-uncle who disappeared way back, before either of us was even born. Caitlin frowned. Vaguely. Nobody ever talked about it much. Mama always said it had something to do with Korean folks Grandpa used to work with, way back on the docks. Never made much sense to me. Figured it was just old family legend, the kind that gets exaggerated over the years. Caitlin felt something cold settle in her chest. You think that's connected to this? I don't know. Probably not. Just seems like a weird coincidence, is all. Neither of them said anything for a while after that, the night settling quiet around them. Crickets filling the silence. Neither one wanted to break first. You gonna keep seeing him? Journey finally asked. Yuta, I don't know, Caitlin admitted. Told him I needed space. Time to figure out what I actually got myself into. Smart move. But nothing. There's always a but with you. Caitlin sighed, staring down at her hands, the same hands that held on so tight 3 days ago. But I keep thinking, if I hadn't grabbed his hand that morning, none of this would be happening. And some small stupid part of me still doesn't regret it, even now. Journey shook her head slowly, half amused, half worried. Stubborn like a mule, just like your mama always said. Guess it runs in the family. Above them, the sky stretched wide and dark, stars scattered across it like nothing dangerous existed anywhere below. But somewhere out there, in a lodge outside Duluth, Jinjong already knew exactly who sent that photo. He just hadn't decided yet whether to warn her or let whatever was coming finally arrive. If you're still with me, let me know in the comments what you think that photo means. I want to hear your theories before the next scene drops. Smash that like button if this twist caught you off guard. And subscribe if you haven't already, because trust me, it only gets crazier from here. You all already know I gotta ask. Drop a comment telling me who you think is really pulling the strings here. Like this if that twist about the grandfather caught you off guard. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time, because the finale is coming in hot. Y'all already know I gotta ask. Drop a comment telling me who you think is really pulling the strings here. Like this if that twist about the grandfather caught you off guard. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time, because the finale is coming in hot. The Riverside Hall smelled like polished wood and old money, twinkling lights strung along the ceiling for the gathering nobody dared miss. Caitlin stood near the back entrance, dress borrowed from Journey, nerves twisting tight in her stomach. 12 days had felt endless and instant at the same time, and now here she was, standing in a room full of people who could make problems disappear with a single phone call. The past 12 days had passed in a blur of preparation. Late nights, reviewing documents with Jinjong, careful conversations with Yuta about what to say, how to say it, how much risk any of them could actually afford to take walking into a room full of people loyal to an organization built on secrets. Journey had wanted to come along too, insisting family stuck together no matter what, but Caitlin had refused, unwilling to put her cousin anywhere near whatever danger tonight might bring. You don't have to do this, Yuta said beside her, voice low. I could handle it myself. And let you take all the credit? Not a chance. She tried for a joke, though her voice shook slightly. Besides, this is about my family too. I'm seeing it through. If something goes wrong in there. Nothing's going wrong, Caitlin said, cutting him off, though she wasn't entirely certain herself. We've got proof. We've got Jinjong. We've got a room full of witnesses who can't just make us disappear quietly. Hopefully, Yuta muttered. Hopefully's good enough for tonight. Across the room, Hyunoke moved through the crowd like she owned every inch of it, greeting people with practiced warmth, nothing in her demeanor suggesting anything was wrong. She caught Caitlin's eye once, briefly, and offered the faintest smile. Not friendly, not exactly hostile either, just aware. She knows we're here, Caitlin whispered. She's known for days, Yuta said. Question is whether she knows what we're about to do. Jinjong appeared at their side moments later, folder tucked beneath his arm, expression carefully neutral. Leadership's gathering in the main hall in 10 minutes. This is our window. You sure about this? Caitlin asked him. No, Jinjong admitted. But sure isn't really an option anymore. Not with everything we've found. The main hall filled slowly, regional leaders, and their people taking seats around a long table, murmured conversations filling the space. Hyunoke took her position at the head, composed as ever, while Yuta, Caitlin, and Jinjong remained near the back, waiting. Before we begin tonight's proceedings, Hyunoke said, voice carrying easily across the room, I understand some of you have concerns you'd like addressed. Please, speak freely. Yuta stepped forward, folder in hand. The room quieted immediately. I have something that needs to be seen, he said. Evidence of financial misconduct spanning over a decade. Funds diverted, records altered, and a connection to a disappearance 22 years ago that was never properly investigated. Murmurs rippled through the room. Hyunoke's expression didn't shift, not even slightly. That's a serious accusation, she said calmly. Against whom, exactly? Yuta held her gaze. Against you. Silence dropped over the hall like a blanket. Every eye turned toward Hyunoke, waiting. She let the silence sit a moment before responding, unhurried, almost amused. I see. And this evidence, may I ask, where exactly did it come from? A storage unit, Jinjong said, stepping forward. Belonging to Yuta's father. Ledgers with your name on nearly every questionable transaction for the past 10 years. Interesting, Hyunoke said. And did it occur to either of you that ledgers can be written by anyone? That names can be forged? That evidence, conveniently discovered in an unlocked storage unit, might not be quite what it appears. Caitlin felt her stomach drop. What are you saying? Hyunoke's eyes shifted to her, cold and calculating. I'm saying, Ms. Cisco, that someone wanted this evidence found. Someone who knew exactly where to point 3 people desperate enough to believe whatever confirmed what they already suspected. The room felt like it was tilting slightly, ground shifting beneath everyone's feet. That's not possible, Yuta said, though uncertainty crept into his voice for the first time. Jinjong found this himself. Nobody led him there. Didn't I? Hyunoke stood slowly, walking around the table with unhurried steps. Who told you about that storage unit, Jinjong? Think carefully. Jinjong's face paled slightly. I found it on my own. Went looking after Caitlin got that photograph. And who do you think sent that photograph in the first place? The room went utterly silent. You're saying you sent it, Caitlin said slowly. To yourself? Why would you do that? Because, Hyunoke said, turning to face the full room now, voice gaining weight and authority. 22 years ago, I discovered the truth about what really happened to Caitlin's grandfather. And it wasn't me who made him disappear. She let that land before continuing. It was Yuta's father. Yuta went rigid, color draining from his face entirely. That's a lie. Is it? Hyunoke's voice stayed calm, though something sharper edged into it now. Your father discovered Wendell's brother digging into financial records he wasn't authorized to see. Records connecting our organization to activities far worse than skimmed funds. He panicked, made a decision he regretted for the rest of his life, and spent every year afterward trying to bury what he'd done. You're lying, Yuta said again, though his voice cracked slightly. Am I? Ask yourself why the ledgers led straight to me, conveniently, when the actual decision-maker has been dead for 8 years and can no longer defend himself or be held accountable. Hyunoke's eyes softened, just barely, something almost like pity crossing her face. I've spent 2 decades protecting your family from that truth, Yuta, covering tracks your father left behind, keeping the business intact despite what he did. And this is how it's repaid. Accusations. In front of everyone who matters. Caitlin felt the room spinning slightly, everything she thought she understood crumbling apart. Prove it, she said, voice shaking. If what you're saying is true, prove it. I intend to, Hyunoke said. She turned to the room at large. I apologize for what's about to unfold in front of all of you. Some truths, unfortunately, don't stay buried forever, no matter how carefully we try. A murmur passed through the gathered leadership. Uneasy glances exchanged around the table. One older man, near the front, cleared his throat. Hyunoke, if this concerns the founder's conduct, perhaps this conversation belongs somewhere more private. With respect, Hyunoke said, private conversations are exactly how this stayed buried for 22 years. I won't be part of continuing that mistake. Jinjong, still standing near Yuta, looked increasingly uncertain. This isn't what I expected to happen tonight. Neither did I, Yuta said quietly, watching Hyunoke with something between dread and disbelief. Hyunoke reached into her jacket, produced a single folded document, sliding it across the table toward Caitlin. A confession, written by Yuta's father himself, 3 years before he died, when illness made him finally consider what he owed the truth. I never delivered it. Couldn't bring myself to destroy his son's image of him completely. Caitlin's hands trembled as she unfolded the paper, scanning the handwriting, the same careful script from the sealed envelope Jinjong had found. Her eyes filled despite everything, reading her grandfather's fate laid out in someone else's guilt. Finally, after 22 years of silence, Yuta stood frozen, staring at his father's handwriting from across the table, the weight of generations crashing down all at once. He killed him, Yuta whispered. My father actually killed him. He panicked. Hyunoke said quietly, some of her earlier hardness fading, made an unforgivable choice in a moment of fear. Spent every day afterward trying to be a better man because of it, even if he never found the courage to confess it publicly. Caitlin looked up from the letter, tears sliding down her face despite every effort to hold them back. My grandmother waited her whole life. Never knew, never got closure. I'm sorry, Hyunoke said, and for the first time since any of them had known of her, she actually sounded like she meant it. I should have found a way to tell someone years ago. Instead, I buried it, same as he did, because exposing it meant destroying everything he built, everything his son inherited. So the photograph, Caitlin said slowly, putting pieces together. The threats, all of it, that was you trying to force this out into the open. Guilt does strange things to a person over 22 years, Hyunoke admitted. I told myself if you found the truth on your own, discovered it through your own effort, it would somehow hurt less than if I simply told you outright. I see now that was foolish, cruel, even. The room remained utterly silent, every leader present witnessing something none of them had expected walking into tonight's gathering. Yuta finally spoke, voice hollow. All this time, I thought I was protecting my family's legacy. Turns out I've been protecting a murderer's memory instead. Your father built something powerful, Hyunoke said. Complicated legacies rarely stay clean, Yuta. That doesn't erase the good he also did, the people he genuinely helped, the family he loved despite his failures. Doesn't excuse what he did either, Yuta said sharply. No, Hyunoke agreed. It doesn't. Nothing excuses it. But you get to decide now what happens next. What kind of legacy you actually want to leave behind. Caitlin wiped her eyes, standing straighter despite everything still churning inside her. What happens to the business now? To all of this? That depends entirely on Yuta, Hyunoke said. I've spent 2 decades trying to keep this organization from collapsing under secrets it was built on. If he wants to walk away from it, dismantle what needs dismantling, I'll support that decision. If he wants something different, I'll support that too. My loyalty was always to this family, however complicated that loyalty became. Later that night, after the gathering dispersed, after regional leaders left with more questions than answers, Caitlin and Yuta sat alone on the hall's back steps, overlooking the dark river beyond. I don't know what to do with any of this, Yuta admitted. Everything I thought I knew about my father, about myself, feels different now. You don't have to figure it all out tonight, Caitlin said gently. You got answers about your grandfather, answers your whole family waited decades for. And it came at the cost of learning my father was responsible. He shook his head slowly. How are you not furious with me right now? I was, Caitlin admitted, for about 10 minutes back there. But you didn't do this, Yuta. Your father did, decades before you were even old enough to understand any of it. You've spent this whole time trying to find the truth too, even when it meant exposing your own family. Doesn't feel like enough. Maybe it isn't, but it's something, and something's more than my family had for 22 years. She looked over at him, something softening in her expression. Susan deserves to know the truth, properly, not secondhand from me. I'll go with you, Yuta said immediately, if she'll allow it. She will. Might take convincing, but she will. 2 days later, they made that visit together. Yuta following a step behind Caitlin as she knocked on Susan's door, the same door she'd stood at weeks earlier with far fewer answers. Susan opened it, taking one look at both their faces, and seemed to understand immediately that whatever they'd come to say, it was heavy. Best come in then, she said quietly. Inside, at the same kitchen table where the old clipping once sat, Caitlin laid out everything. The gathering, the confession, the truth about Yuta's father finally spoken aloud after 22 years of silence. Susan listened without interrupting, hands folded tight in her lap, face unreadable through most of it. When Caitlin finished, the kitchen fell silent, except for the old clock ticking somewhere down the hall. So he's really gone, Susan finally said. Been gone this whole time. Not run off. Not hiding somewhere, ashamed to come home. He's gone, Caitlin confirmed gently. I'm so sorry, Susan. Susan's eyes filled, though she pressed her lips together, fighting to hold composure the way she'd probably practiced doing for over 2 decades. 22 years wondering if he was out there somewhere, maybe with another family, maybe just too ashamed to reach out. 22 years of almost hating him for staying gone. She shook her head slowly. Should have known. Should have trusted what I always believed deep down. He wouldn't have left us. Not willingly. Yuta, who'd stayed quiet through most of the conversation, finally spoke. Ms. Fairweather, I'm sorry for what my father did, for everything it cost your family. Susan studied him for a long moment, something complicated moving across her face. You're not your father, son. Don't carry guilt that ain't yours to carry. Feels like mine anyway. Feelings ain't always facts, Susan said, voice gentler now. Your father made a terrible choice, one he apparently spent years regretting, based on what you've told me. That doesn't make you responsible for it. Makes you responsible for what you do now that you know. And what should I do? Susan considered the question seriously. Make sure nobody else's family has to wait 22 years for the truth. That's a start. Yuta nodded slowly, something settling in his expression, like a decision finally taking shape. I intend to. Before they left, Susan pulled Caitlin into a tight hug, holding on longer than usual. Your grandfather would be proud of you, baby, fighting for truth the way he tried to. Just wish it hadn't cost you nearly as much as it cost him. It didn't cost me my life, Caitlin said softly. Just cost me some sleep and a few gray hairs, probably. That got a small, watery laugh out of Susan. The first real one Caitlin had heard from her in weeks. Stubborn like your mama said. Like your grandfather too, come to think of it. Driving back from Susan's that evening, the sun sinking low over the water, Yuta finally broke the comfortable silence between them. Can I ask you something? He said. Depends. Why did you really grab my hand that morning? Before you knew anything about any of this, before there was any reason to get involved in something this messy. Caitlin thought about it honestly, because somebody was falling and I had a choice. Grab on, or watch and regret it forever. Wasn't really a hard choice when it came down to it. Most people would have hesitated. Maybe. I'm not most people, though. No, Yuta said, something warm finally breaking through the exhaustion on his face. You really aren't. Silas Whitcomb found Hyunoke in her office 2 days after the gathering, boxes half packed around her, decades of files being sorted into piles marked keep, shred, and handover. Words already spreading, Silas said carefully. People are nervous, wondering what happens to their positions, their arrangements. Let them wonder, Hyunoke said, not looking up from the file in her hands. Nervous people make careful decisions, better than the alternative. Are you worried about what comes next for you? Hyunoke finally looked up, something tired but resolute in her expression. I spent 22 years protecting a secret that should have come out immediately. Whatever consequences follow that decision, I've earned them. You could have kept hiding it. Nobody would have known. I would have known, she said simply. Sat in this office year after year, watching that family's grief carry on, knowing I held the answer the whole time. Some weights get too heavy to carry indefinitely, Silas. Eventually you either set them down, or they crush you completely. Silas considered that. What will you do now? Help Yuta untangle what's left, honestly. After that, I don't know. Retire somewhere quiet. Maybe. Try to figure out who I am when I'm not managing other people's secrets. A faint, almost wistful smile crossed her face. Strange thought, after so many years. For what it's worth, Silas said, I think you did the right thing eventually, even if it took 22 years to get there. Eventually isn't good enough, Hyunoke said quietly. But it's what I have to offer now. Better late than never, I suppose. She turned back to the boxes, resuming her sorting, though her hands moved slower now, more deliberate. You know, Silas, I used to believe protecting this family meant protecting its secrets, no matter the cost. Took me 2 decades and a stranger's stubborn courage on a cliff somewhere to finally understand how wrong I had that. The trail worker, Caitlin. She held onto a falling stranger for 6 minutes, refusing to let go even when it made no sense to keep holding on. That kind of courage has a way of exposing cowardice in everyone standing nearby, whether they're ready to face it or not. Hyunoke set down the file in her hands, meeting Silas's eyes directly. I wasn't ready, not for years, but I'm ready now. Silas nodded slowly, understanding settling over him. Guess it's never too late to finally let go of something you've been carrying too long. No, Hyunoke agreed, something almost peaceful crossing her tired features. Guess it isn't. A week after the gathering, Jinjong found Yuta in the study again, same spot where he'd delivered his father's letter, though everything about the room felt different now, lighter somehow. You've made a decision, Jinjong said. Not a question. I have. Yuta turned from the window. I'm stepping back from most of the organization's operations, handing regional control over to leadership who can run things legitimately, or as close to legitimately as this business allows. What's left, the parts that can't be salvaged or converted into something honest, I'm shutting down entirely. Jinjong absorbed this quietly. That's going to make you enemies. People who profit from the parts you're closing. Probably, Yuta agreed. But I spent my whole life protecting a legacy I didn't even fully understand. Turns out the legacy was built on something I can't protect anymore. Not with a clear conscience. And Hyun okay. She's agreed to help with the transition. Says she owes that much. After everything. Yuta's expression turned thoughtful. Strange. Trusting her again after everything that happened. But she could have let that secret stay buried forever. She chose not to, even knowing what it might cost her position, her standing, maybe her safety. What about me? Jinjong asked quietly. Where do I fit into whatever comes next? Yuta studied his oldest friend for a long moment. Wherever you want to fit, Jinjong. You've earned that much, at least. You could have looked away that morning on the cliff. Could have kept quiet about that storage unit once you found it. Instead, you chose the harder path every single time. Jinjong looked down, something like relief and exhaustion both crossing his face at once. Wasn't always sure I was choosing right. Neither was I, Yuta admitted. Guess that's what this whole mess taught me. Sometimes you don't get certainty. You just get a choice, and you make the best one you can with what you know. Sounds like something Caitlin would say. Yuta almost smiled at that. Probably picked it up from her, honestly. Jinjong glanced toward the door, hesitating before speaking again. For what it's worth, boss, I think your father would understand why you're doing this, even if it costs the family everything he built. Maybe, Yuta said quietly, or maybe he'd have been too afraid to let it happen. Same as always. Either way, I'm not him. I get to decide what happens next, not the fear he carried his whole life. That's the difference, I think, Jinjong H said, between surviving something and actually healing from it. Yuta nodded slowly, something settling in his chest that felt, for the first time in weeks, almost like peace. Let's get to work then. Healing takes time, but it doesn't happen standing still. Caitlin's own family gathered 2 weeks later. A small quiet dinner at Susan's house, something that hadn't happened in years, according to Journey, who spent most of the evening happily overwhelmed by the sheer number of cousins crammed into one kitchen. Susan stood at the head of the table, raising a glass of sweet tea instead of wine, voice steady despite everything the past month had cost her emotionally. Been a long time since this family had real closure about anything, she said. Tonight, we finally do. To truth, however long it takes to surface. And to the ones brave enough to go digging for it. Glasses raised around the table, Caitlin's eyes finding Yuta's from across the room, where he stood slightly apart, still uncertain of his place among a family that had every reason to resent him, yet somehow didn't. You're part of this too, you know, Susan said to him directly, noticing his hesitation. Whatever your father did, you're the one who helped make this right. That counts for something in this house. Yuta nodded, throat tight, unable to fully voice how much that acceptance meant after everything. Later, as the dinner wound down and cousins drifted toward the porch with plates of dessert, Journey pulled Caitlin aside near the kitchen sink. You good? Journey asked, voice low. Really, it's not the version you tell everybody else. Caitlin considered the question honestly, watching Yuta through the doorway, laughing quietly at something one of her younger cousins said, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. Yeah, I think I actually am. Tired, still processing a lot, but good. Never thought I'd see the day some Korean mafia boss sat at Grandma Susan's table eating her cornbread. Life's weird like that. Life's insane like that, Journey corrected, laughing. But I'm glad. For you. For all of us, honestly. Feels like something finally healed tonight that's been broken since before either of us was born. Caitlin looked around the crowded kitchen, generations of her family filling a space that had felt too quiet for too long. Yeah, she agreed softly. Feels exactly like that. 3 weeks later, Caitlin stood at the trail overlook where everything had started, camera in hand again, watching another sunrise stretch orange and gold across Lake Superior. Journey stood beside her, thermos of coffee between them. "Feels different now," Journey said, standing up here. "Yeah," Caitlin agreed. "It does." "You still seeing him?" "Yuta." Caitlin smiled slightly, working on figuring that out. "He's got a lot to untangle, business-wise. Family-wise, too. But yeah, we're seeing where things go." And Susan finally got her real closure. Cried for 2 days straight, but said it felt like putting something down she'd been carrying since before I was born. Caitlin exhaled slowly, watching the light spread wider across the water. "Wish it hadn't taken this long. Wish my grandfather could have gotten justice sooner. But at least now the truth's actually out there, instead of buried in some drawer for another 20 years. "You did that," Journey said. "You know that, right? All of it started because you grabbed some stranger's hand on a cliff." Caitlin thought about that morning, how simple the choice had felt in the moment, how complicated everything became afterward. Some choices, she realized, changed everything precisely because you made them without overthinking, without hesitating, without waiting to see if it was safe first. "Guess some things are just worth holding on to," she said quietly, "even when you don't know yet what they'll cost you." Footsteps approached from the trailhead behind them. Yuta, slightly out of breath, holding 2 coffees like he had that very first morning at the trail office weeks ago. "You're becoming predictable," Caitlin said, though her smile gave away how little she minded. "Figured some traditions are worth keeping," he said, handing her a cup. Journey glanced between them, grabbing her thermos and backing toward the trail with exaggerated subtlety. "I'm gonna go check on, something. Somewhere else. Bye." Once she was gone, Yuta stood beside Caitlin at the overlook, both of them quiet for a moment, watching the sunrise finish spreading across the water. "How's everything settling?" Caitlin finally asked. "With the business." "With Hyun okay." Slowly, Yuta admitted, "Untangling 20 years of complicated decisions doesn't happen overnight. But it's happening, piece by piece. We're turning it into something my father maybe wanted to build originally, before fear and bad choices got in the way." "And you? How are you settling?" He considered the question seriously. "Better than I expected, honestly. Lighter, somehow, even with everything that came out. Guess there's something freeing about finally facing the truth instead of running from it. Told you the truth was worth digging for." "You did," he agreed. "Turns out you're usually right about things." "Careful," she teased. "Comments like that go straight to my head. Wouldn't dream of stopping you." They stood together a while longer, coffee cooling slightly in their hands, sunlight spreading warm and steady across the cliffs where this whole impossible story had begun. "Can I ask you something?" Caitlin said eventually. "Depends," Yuta said, echoing her own words back at her, small smile tugging at his mouth. "Where do we go from here? You and me, I mean. Not the business, not the family stuff. Just us." Yuta turned to face her fully, something steady and certain in his expression despite everything they'd both survived to reach this moment. "Wherever you want to go. I already know I'm willing to follow, after everything you've shown me about holding on when it matters." Caitlin smiled, looking back out over the water, the same water that had almost taken him from her, before she even knew his name. "Guess we'll figure it out together then," she said. "One sunrise at a time." "I can live with that," Yuta said. "Good, because I wasn't really asking permission." He laughed at that, genuine and easy, a sound that felt earned after everything they'd both survived to reach this quiet, ordinary morning. "No," he said, "I don't suppose you were." Down below, Lake Superior stretched out calm and endless, the same water that had almost taken him weeks earlier now, catching the morning light like nothing had ever gone wrong there at all. Caitlin leaned into his shoulder, watching the horizon brighten fully, grateful, finally, for a morning that asked nothing more of her than simply being present in it. "Best sunrise yet," she murmured. "Every sunrise is the best one," Yuta said. "Once you've almost missed all the rest." Caitlin smiled at that, tucking the thought away somewhere close, somewhere she'd probably return to on harder days ahead. For now, though, the coffee was warm, the water was calm, and the man beside her was very much alive. Below them, the sun climbed higher, spreading light across water that had nearly swallowed a stranger weeks earlier, water that now just looked peaceful, steady, like it always had been, like nothing dangerous had ever happened there at all. But something had happened there, something that changed two families forever, uncovered truths buried for decades, and proved that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is simply refuse to let go. Holding on to someone, even a stranger, can cost you more than you expect. But some truths only surface because somebody refused to let go, and healing starts the moment you choose honesty over the comfort of silence. Y'all, if you made it this far, thank you for real. This one meant a lot to write. Tell me in the comments which twist hit you hardest. I read every single one. And if you're new here, subscribe, because this channel's got a whole lot more stories like this one coming your way.